Ray, Steven Weinberg, a good friend, said that the more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless. You don't agree with that. Why?
I think it's the totally unsurprising conclusion of excluding meaning from the scientific enterprise. In the same paper, I think he talks about the explanatory arrow, pointing downwards from society to people, from people to organisms, from organisms to cells, from cells to molecules. So he says that's where explanation goes. Well, if that's the trajectory of explanation, no wonder you're shedding payloads of meaning at each level. So you will end up with something that is utterly meaningless. You've begun by excluding meaning, you find no meaning at the end. Surprise, surprise.
That sounds nice, some might say glib.
Yes,
because what you are eliminating are things that are so ethereal, some would say vacuous, that they are unable to be studied, and if you let them just sort of sit there as these amorphous things, it would impede your ability to have any sort of rigor in understanding what you're doing.
But science isn't a search for meaning. Science is a search for some practical, useful truths from generalizable laws. The fact they lack meaning, that's fine, it's not part of their job description. So if you think the laws of nature, such as they are the totality of all that there is, then of course you'll find the totality of all that there is lacks meaning. But science is not about finding meaning. And in fact, Galileo famously said, the job of the scientist is not to tell you how to go to heaven, but to see how the heavens go. And so that distinction is very important. It's made science powerful and effective and useful, and thank you very much indeed. And indeed, it's fed into things, quasi-meaningful activity in my own life. There's no meaning in a mobile phone, but gosh, it's jolly useful when it comes to, forging meaningful or meaningless relationships.
So is a search for meaning then possible in a way that goes beyond the tautology of, we all want meaning in our lives and we're using it in a very general sense? I mean, is there any possibility for fundamental meaning? We all have minor, superficial meaning, sure. I don't want to deal with that. But is there then the possibility of fundamental meaning?
I think that's a really interesting and very difficult question. I mean, I suppose what one's thinking about is a point of convergence of all one's meanings. The love of one's children, the delight in science, pleasure on a hot day, all those things, as if they could converge on a single point, a bit like the vanishing point in a perspectival picture. And that, I think, is probably a forlorn hope. The other idea, of course, is of an overarching meaning that actually holds up the universe and you're just part of it. And that, of course, is the great attraction of religion. And indeed, the attraction of religion is that all those separate meanings, whether it's the love of one's children or pursuit of one's
have
profession,
a coherence.
All come, and they're all addressed to a single entity. There is a point of convergence.
Right.
A point of convergence which, interestingly, you can then share with others. And Kierkegaard famously said, purity of heart is to will one thing. And that's where everything comes together.
You reject that?
Well, I'd love to believe it's true, but for all sorts of reasons I don't think it is true. And of course, some of those who have pure hearts have horrible intentions.
That to me is not terribly relevant because that deals with human frailty as opposed to deep ontology about what it is. I want to try to get to that possibility of meaning. Now, some would say that they don't believe in God in the universe, but the universe does have meaning. It's about something. There's some sort of a transcendent something or other that maybe they obviously don't know, but not willing to go to the two opposing schemes now. One, there is a God that has all purpose and designed the universe for X, and the other is that the more we know about the universe, the more it seems pointless.
Yeah.
So, do you think there is? I kind of live with the extremes myself. I can't tell you which one I go for, but I mean to try to find something else is a little difficult for me.
It is. I mean, first of all, the totality of things couldn't be about anything else, by definition. There's nothing outside that totality. So it couldn't, as it were, point to something else.
That would seem to argue for pointlessness.
Well, if you add everything up, of course, the totality, by definition, cannot be exceeded. The other thing is meanings seem to be inescapably local. That's their part of their very aboutness. And the other is meaning is something that's intrinsically dynamic. In the very participle, meaning, suggests that it's something always evolving. So for those three reasons, I think it's unlikely that we should find, as it were, single overarching meaning of the totality of things.
So I think you're gravitating to what you rejected at the beginning.
Don't think so, because there are lots and lots of meanings. My life is it has an embarrassment of riches or an embarrassment of bling sometimes. It's absolutely overwhelming.
Sure,
Chock-a-block
but those
meaning.
are small M's, and I respect and treasure those. But those are small M's. Those are things that are transient and will be forgotten and will have no ultimate permanence.
I think that's true. And so, behind that is that we're haunted by finitude. All the meanings we have in our lives will be erased. And even my memory will disappear. But memory of me will disappear pretty quickly. We all leave a short wake. And when you're dead, it doesn't matter whether it's a short wake or a long wake. Shakespeare didn't enjoy 2016, although he was celebrated all over the world. Posthumous fame is wasted on the dead. But it does seem to me that my own position does leave a crack of light open, a sense of possibility that perhaps when I die, that may not be the end of the story. But I don't think.
So that's very interesting to me that you would admit, as a harsh secular humanist, pardon the expression, someone who militantly would choose atheism over agnosticism for a series of interesting reasons. You would admit that there is some possibility that there is something beyond death.
But I have no story of the continuation of the story.
Right,
for example,
right.
me without flesh, pretty miserable object. Me with flesh, pretty improbable object. So for all sorts of reasons, eternity is the most unattractive proposition. Think of your next door neighbours. Square root of -1, would you like to be, the kind of other characters in eternity? So yes, I have an idea that perhaps the story isn't ended, but I certainly, as a matter of principle, don't have any idea of how it might be continued or what continuation would be.
If you started a religion based upon that, I could be your first adherent.
We'd probably charge.